Hello, everybody. A very good evening to all who are joining from India. And if you're joining from somewhere outside of India, good morning or good afternoon. I am Bidisha Bhattacharya, Growth Manager of Stack.me. Welcome to the second season of the Stack.me Academy Masterclass on how can writers use AI for text, images, and more. Stack.me Academy is our initiative to ensure those who are on the platform and also writers and creators around the world get to be better at things they are focusing on. For instance, writing, audio, podcasts, business writing, fiction, photography, illustrations, a lot of different topics that we are going to run our masterclasses on. So if you haven't checked out our earlier masterclasses yet, please do visit our YouTube channel or Facebook page where you can find them all. With that, I am really excited to present our masterclass today with Samir Patil, founder and CEO of Stack.me. Samir has 15 plus years of experience in the media and tech industry. He graduated from MIT with a degree in engineering and management. In this masterclass, Samir will be covering all the different ways in which writers use AI for text, images, and more. So without further ado, I will hand the floor off to you, Samir. And at the end of the session, we will have Q&A. So wherever you are following this masterclass, please drop in your questions in the comment section. We've always tried our best in answering most questions in our previous sessions, so we promise to make that happen today as well. With that, Samir, over to you.
Hello, everybody. So we are going to run this session in three parts. I will walk through what I think are some of the most useful cases of what AI can do for writers right now. And then we'll have a conversation around what are some of the challenges, what are some of the doubts and questions everybody has about AI, because it has been in the news so much in the last 2 months. And then we will have an open Q&A, and you can, of course, jump in with your questions anytime. You can type it in the chat box below, and we will go through those questions at the end or through the session. So fundamentally, this session is about how AI can be useful to writers. And there are a few things to know about AI at this point. We have had many comings of this technology many times before. So if there are there are two kinds of reactions to the many technology revolutions that are promised every 6 months. One is to say that, of course, yet another hype cycle has begun. At some point, there will be a normalization, and you will know whether something is useful or not. And then the second is that there are some technologies that are so self-evidently useful that they take off. For example, mobile phones with the touch screen, social media in its early days, and so on. And it's my argument in today's session that AI is probably one of those technologies that the utility is so self-evident that we will probably see an uptake, and the hype cycle, of course, will be there. But the fact that ChatGPT got to 100 million users within 6 weeks or so, shows that this is a much more universal technology than many of the recent things, like whether it's blockchain or Web3 and so on, that are very useful for a very specific kind of user or creator. But the AI has caught the imagination of everybody, because almost every aspect of the work that we do, whether it's knowledge work or writers or so on, is impacted. So there are two things, if I had to sort of the takeaway from this class, at least from where I sit, is number one, the capabilities of the generative systems, the generative AI being the terminology for things like ChatGPT, text to image systems that you may have heard of, like DALI, Stack's own Picto, and others. And then that they are improving so rapidly that I think at this point, most people underestimate what they can do. And, I hope after you see some of the output of what is possible today, you will sort of realize what generative text to image, for example, has done is put every artist who ever has created something visual in the pockets of every writer. The second thing is there's a lot of debate around whether this is AI, as in, is this artificial intelligence, or is it some kind of, statistical tool? And the other kind of skepticism is this artistic or creative enough? Are you not just regurgitating all human creativity, and sort of this is not neither AI nor creative? And I think I'm going to sidestep those arguments unless lots of people have questions. We'll talk about that, because I think at this point the practical things AI can do far outweigh all the limitations and all these theoretical debates, right? So that's my second sort of big point. So if you go to the next chart, um, I want to sort of like very, very simple typology of what is generative AI. There is, text to image, which is the ability to type in a text, a prompt, and have the system generate for you an image that you can sort of use. It's your copyright on that image. And that's something that we know all writers struggle with finding right stock images. Or illustrate a fictional character that they may have created, right? So here, like right away, is something that everybody struggles with, and I think the solution that we already have is so mature that I don't see why these synthetic images cannot meet the needs of like most creative writers. News might be the only exception, and even in news, like features and so on can use them. Second, everybody has heard of Chat GPT. I'm just calling it text to text, as in you enter a text and you get query responses. We are used to such systems, but this is generative in the sense it's able to create new you can ask it to summarize an email, write a new email to your publisher, and so on. So you'll be surprised what it can do. And then there's a whole bunch of technology that now seems almost certain to show up, which is text to video, text animation. I'm not going to touch that too much today. But once you realize the potential of the first two, you can see how the three is just it's not a step change. It's just an evolution of what's going to happen. So if you go to the next one. Yeah. So I started with this experiment, and I think from a writer's point of view, or if you're coming at it from, is this AI, how good is the output? I think there are the next 4 or 5 images is sort of my attempt at just showing through images that why it's not a trivial thing, right? So if you go back, and I said, like, let's create an image of a book cover for Frankenstein, and all I said to the text to image system was to say, I want a book cover that Michelangelo would have painted for Frankenstein. That's it. Like literally no more than 15 words. I played around with it, and this is what it did. So now, if you look at this, you will say, yeah, but what this has done is it has taken an image that's in the public domain that dominates the image of Frankenstein, which comes from a movie in the black and white movie in the 30s, and that's why it was able to imagine. The next image I created by saying, create an image of Frankenstein as if it's made up of chopped vegetables. Now, a lot of you, any of you who's listening to this or watching this later, this is the kind of graphic arts work that you have to do quite often. This is like bread and butter. And it was able to generate, it can generate, like, if you see some of the next images, I said, do the same with pebbles. It's able to do this kind of very useful graphic layout work very quickly. And from a purely a cost perspective, if you wanted to do something like this and you wanted to farm this out on Dribble or hire somebody to do it, it would make it not feasible for most writers who are working on their own. So already we have an output. So the next image that you see right now, this was a prompt. I said, give me an image as if, I think this is, Cartier-Bresson photograph from the 1930s. Show it to me as if he photographed Frankenstein. And this is to show that it's able to actually generate like very high resolution 4K images that look like photographs. So if you look at the 4 or 5 images I've included here of Frankenstein in my like longer blog posts, I have many more. The idea was to, by elimination, show that it's actually the capability is very generalized, right? So for example, we are used to, for the last few years, having these photograph, what are they called? The app filters saying, hey, make my profile image look like Van Gogh painting. We are sort of familiar with that, and sort of applying the style of some very well-known famous painters is sort of at this point already trivial. It's not surprising. But if you look at what the system can do once you move past that, so if you go to the next one, yeah. So here I said, make me a cover for Romeo and Juliet in a miniature style, a Mughal miniature style, and it actually hasn't done a great job. This shows one of the limitations of the system, that it's training images. How does this work? Generative AI work? Some clues you can see from the output, right? So it has trained literally on a set of, and I am sort of misquoting the number, but on the order of billions of images from the internet, and generalize that into its ideas about what things are. So the Romeo and Juliet experiment is actually very interesting, because all I said was make a Romeo and Juliet cover with in Mughal miniature style. So for the AI system, it needs to understand that Romeo and Juliet is a romantic couple, and that you can, and it sort of uses that understanding, which is a textual understanding, has nothing to do with the image, and which is why, again, these are some of the earliest systems that can seem to be intelligent, right? Even if they are statistically understanding the world. There's a term for it. It's called like comprehension without competence, right? The idea that the system really doesn't understand either Romeo or Juliet or romance, but it knows what I intend to generate, right? So the big difference between the Frankenstein images and Romeo and Juliet is that it's actually one level of complexity more. That Frankenstein was purely a visual task, because the generative AI has learned from all these images. It knows Frankenstein is this old image. It uses that all the time to create, right? It is much more derivative. But when I said Romeo and Juliet, it didn't have any visual reference at all, zero, right? Maybe some movies and whatever, but it doesn't have a dominant visual reference. It is generating something based on the idea of Romeo and Juliet. And if you see the next one, this I said, create a Romeo and Juliet as an anthropomorphic lion, and of course you can see that it has two lions, and it it again uses the idea of Romeo and Juliet. It understands what the book cover needs to show, and it has generated something that no previous AI system would have done. So again, we are now moving more and more in the realm of things that are, you can say, okay, this is not creative enough. Is this a great artist? No. But is it a very useful assistant to have on your side when you're doing graphical work? I think, I mean, at this point, for most writers who are who don't have a graphic art budget of their own, it can do things that just 6 months ago would have been not possible even for a well-funded media publishing independent writer. You could do that right now. Or most of these systems are either free or a freemium. We have on Stack our own system for it called Picto. You can create things that you own the right for, and you can push it in directions, creative directions that are all your own, right? So for example, I don't know if I have this image. If you, what's the next image here? Yeah, so I'll go back. So go back one more. One of the big next things that will happen here, right, for people who are concerned about, are we using the works of living artists and taking away their work? One of the big things that is happening and should happen is that most people can opt out of their images being used to learn and train the AI. Second thing is that you can train the AI in your own style. And already these systems are alive. So if you're a graphic artist and you want to say that, hey, I want to create something that actually looks like my work, but I want to use it. So that capability will also come online. It doesn't take a lot of images to train the AI, is the big technological learning here. And all of this will happen, right? So again, I would encourage everybody to use the tools and I think that it has reached a point of like quality and quantity output that is useful for like every writer, every creator in the world. So if you go to the next one, I wanted to give you a sense of, again, I'm pushing in this presentation from like the idea that, oh, it's created something like Michelangelo would have painted, was that is sort of trivial and derivative, to Romeo and Juliet, where it had to understand something about, the concept of Romeo and Juliet, and I forced it to create it in styles that are not common, even with non-human actors. The next few images are to sort of give you a sense of what it takes to create. So the prompts, this is sort of the term that are being, I put engineering quotes because as an ex-engineer, I feel like this is not engineering, but that's what is being called prompt engineering. The idea is that you create, like what are the instructions that make these AI things give you better and better output. And there's a little bit of a learning curve. And again, that will reduce. But I wanted to show some examples and again push the AI to the next level. So the first one was highly derivative. Frankenstein, we know the image, Romeo and Juliet concept. Uh, Here, I'm trying to make it do something that is not where the visual images are few. Like I say, for the next few things, I use the idea of the subject of the blue rose. The blue rose, because blue rose is not so common. There are not many photographs of blue roses, and whatever there are, like they're the same ones because blue rose is a rarity in nature. And then the second thing I've tried to do is to create an image that just simply doesn't exist. So a blue rose on the coffin of the great Egyptian pharaohs doesn't exist, and or at least there is no such photograph. And so you can see that it has actually created an image with the prompt that is on the left. And if you go to the next one, again, a thing just simply does not exist in nature, um, and with materials that may not exist, right? So you can actually again push the AI to create visuals that cannot be found in the visual like repository of whatever we have, um, and create materials that you imagine. So if you see the next one, I wonder if I've sort of included that. Yeah, so I tried to make like a blue rose made out of glass, and you can start seeing what the real potential here is. That the real potential here is you should forget the debates about like how much of it is derivative. You can actually almost use this AI with these prompts as clay, right? Literally. And clay also is not a sufficient metaphor because you can make it from like crystals, and you can sort of create almost any material you can imagine, right? And so we are now getting to a point where the AI is giving you things that you're specifically you designed. Again, I tried to come up with a subject for this which doesn't exist commonly, which is the blue rose, and try to create it out of things where there are no photographs like this. There are no references. And if I was writing a story, for example, where would you use it, right? So let's say I was writing a story about a blue rose. If I had to get it illustrated, or if I had to find stock images, or if I had to create, if I was like an artist who created, real life replicas, all of that would be much harder than what I had to do here. It took me maybe this particular thing took me longer because I had to experiment, right? In order to come up with all of these things, maybe I spent a few hours on Picto. So that's sort of the idea. So hopefully from my three examples, very well known image, Frankenstein, very well known idea, Romeo and Juliet, completely unknown idea, completely random ass thing that I have thought of, the blue rose. You can do all of that with the text to image AI. So, sort of switching gears, I see some questions. Let me see. Okay, no. So if anybody has questions about text to image, because I'm going to switch to the other technology on AI that is directly relevant for writers, which is the text to text. I would call it the Chat GPT. Feel free to start sort of throwing your questions at us. So I will. So in addition to text to uh, image, which I think at this point is the most mature of all the technologies, the AI technologies. We have like, we are on version 2. Remember, even this mature thing is the worst version of this software, right? So by in next 6 months you'll have even better, and so on and so forth. So ChatGPT has had even more general interest than the text to image. um, I think there are a few things I would say. Like, it's the biggest thing about ChatGPT is more than its output, it's the input. It's the way in which it is able to understand your questions and remember the context is so natural that we, again, it's a leap forward. So highly encourage. It's free to use. Everybody should use it to get a sense of what I mean. um, the second thing is that it is very good at doing a lot of interesting things. The first thing that people try to make it do, like, for example, write me a short story about a girl playing football on a school field. It actually is able to generate something interesting. But I think that the argument in this presentation is that the most useful thing for writers that it can do is it can help you research. It can help you with story ideas. It can actually fix typos, formatting, summarize, expand on an idea. It works fantastically well as an assistant. It has sort of significant limitations, and I would sort of mention two big ones from a writer perspective. Number one, it doesn't have a sense of theory of the mind. It doesn't have a sense of psychology of people, right? It is actually taking text and sort of merging and recreating it. And you can see that limitation if you if you're writing a story and you write act 1, act 2, and say finish act 3. I don't think it sort of does a job that a human writer can do. Like, it's not even close. And then the second thing is, it doesn't have a sense of the physical world. So if in your story all the action is happening on the third floor, it will completely miss the significance of that. And if you ask it to complete a story that you have written, right? And of course, most people are not using to write stories, but I'm sort of giving that as an example because those are two well-known fundamental limitations: the psychology and sort of the physiology of the world. It doesn't have a model for that. What it is a large language model, right? I'm sure everybody by now has heard the term LLM. So it is playing with language, and it is playing with rearranging these words. Its sense of the world in some ways is much more limited than the text to image stuff I showed you. And then it has this annoying habit at this point of making things up if you ask it for a factual thing. But that, I think, is getting fixed over the next sort of in the next version itself. You already have some versions of ChatGPT which has citations for all the facts and so on that it talks about. So if you go to the next one. Yeah, so here is the next. So if you think that you know all the different ways in which you can use ChatGPT, I think you will be surprised how some of this sort of plays out. So before I actually talk about this, I think let's show the video of what I made ChatGPT do, and I'll sort of walk you through it. Yeah, so hopefully you guys can see it. So I asked ChatGPT to write a story, give me the character descriptions, give me the plot summary, and format it right, and give me a title, right? And then this video, and we will sort of have this available when you see it. And then I interacted with saying, hey, this story is not so great. And I asked it to write the story as if it's a so-called Bollywood film, and it sort of shows all the strengths and weaknesses of the chat GPT system right now. The biggest strength is that it understands your query very, very well. There's no ambiguity. There is no misstep. Second, even more impressive, it is able to format things and present them in the right way, like without like any errors, right? So if you say, I want this structured output, I want a title, I want character outlines, I want the plot, blah and blah, it does it super well. Then it is able to, like, if you say there was a particular plot twist it had in the story, I said, I don't like it, give me some options for it, right? And again, this goes to my belief that right now what this thing is very good at, even though all it is doing is scouring all the human generated ideas and plots, but no human mind can actually store them. So as a force multiplier, as somebody who's a fantastic assistant sitting next to you all the time and reminding you of things that you might know already. It will again make writers far more productive. I don't know if they will be more creative. Like writers might say that whether it makes me creative or not, and that's why I'm sidestepping this whole thing of what is creative, what it is not. I think right now it's such a big productivity enhancer that everybody should give it a try and see if it fits in their way of working. And then, so what I did next in the next couple of charts was to show that again, our sort of imagination is the limit for how we can use this, this generative AI. So here I combined Chat GPT and the text to image, right? So I said to Chat GPT, I followed the following steps, right? One, I said, I want to create images of an entirely new species of birds and flowers. For the flowers, give me. I tried the following track. If you go back, you will see that I said like come up with 5 fantastic flowers that don't exist in nature, and I said a fantastic flower with rainbow colored petals that swirl, and you don't have that in nature because flowers are adapted to a particular ecology. They tend to have a certain color that we have learned all of that in biology. There is no reason for such a flower to exist. And a flower which is vibrant pink, purple petals and spiral outward like a galaxy. These prompts were not written by me. Those were written by Chat GPT. I said like I want fantastical flowers. Create a prompt for text to image, and it came up with a bunch. I'm just showing you a couple of examples. And it is, again, maybe I could have come up with some of these myself, but the space of possibilities I'm able to explore because I have an assistant like Chat GPT is just going to be fundamentally bigger, because it is tireless, and it brings to bear all its knowledge. There is no lapse of memory in sort of helping me think about new ideas, right? So at least I find it. So if you go to the next one, I did the same thing, but with a slight twist this time. And I said, I want to create images of birds, species that do not exist, but I want them to be based on real birds that do exist, right? So create prompts. So it did something that I think is derivative of a peacock, with the iridescent blue and green feathers. But it obviously there is no such, neither of these birds exist in nature, right? So if you see the trajectory of what you can do, again, these are all done in systems that are free to use on Stack. You can use multiple other systems. Chat GPT is free. You can create images that absolutely put to shame any images that you might get from playing with Adobe or whatever for like hours and hours. So and this is like 1 year into this evolution of this technology. What will happen from here on is again self-evident. I can animate these, I can create videos of these, I can convert them into, I can create music. Like one of the big like immediate things that I sort of decided not to talk about is that generative AI for generating tunes and music is extremely good already. Generative AI to convert your voice, like learn your voice and then read your text in your voice, is fantastic and will be like flawless. Again, there are some limitation when it comes to our accents and from India and like non-English words. So that may take like the last 20% of getting it right for every geography might take a long time. But when it comes to English, this is sort of a solved problem. So hopefully, like if you look at the progression, my argument would be that, like I said, AI is here already. Whether you believe it's AI or it is some kind of extremely sophisticated software, it doesn't really matter. And whether it's creative or it's just replicating or enhancing your creativity, also I would argue is less of a question. But the fact that it can create all these wonderful things for anybody with just your written word, right? So the ability to take your imagination in text and convert it into something visual, I mean, it's like as big a change. I mean, people say, okay, this is like the mobile moment when mobile phones started having photographs. I think it's sort of bigger than that, and I can't come up with a good enough analogy that what it means to put every known visual resource in the pockets of every writer. and sort of they can conjure it up and shape it in whatever form they want with just their words. So I think so that's most of my presentation. I think what we'll do is like we'll do a bunch of questions and then sort of take it from there.
Excellent. Thank you, Samir. That was fantastic. And we do have a couple of questions coming in, so I'll dive right to them. Sanjoy Banerjee has asked, can you ask the system to make tweaks to a generated image? And can you ask now to make the rose red, the rose, apparently the blue rose that he's speaking about, keeping all the other things intact, and does it get generated all over again?
Yeah, no, so yes to all of the above. It doesn't get generated. I mean, you can do generate again, but you can also say just change the color of the rose, right? And so, in fact, one of the biggest things happening here is the system capabilities are there. This is all now about trying to create the UI UX layer on top of it that makes it easy for people to use and sort of play with that.
Okay, excellent. The other question that we have is, what about the ethics of using existing AI images?
No, you mean existing? Yeah, existing. So I think, like I said, I think most people should be. I mean, there is already a movement to take out the works of any living artist who doesn't want to opt into this. I think, in addition to this, what I'm describing as this very collaborative thing, there'll be lawsuits, there'll be all kinds of questions around what images should go in. But you just think about it, right? Even if you take that all out, that's why I deliberately use very early artists, 500-year-old, certainly not in copyright, right? All of that is going to be fair game. And yeah, living artists and people who don't want their works in this will opt out of it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, the next question that we have is Picto as well as ChatGPT together, are they going to replace all writers and creators?
No, so yeah, no, this is a good question because so I think people swing between this is not very useful to me to like, okay, this is going to replace all humans.
Right.
And I mean, I don't think either. I mean, first of all, the first thing is absolutely not true. That was the gist of my thing. The second thing is is not so black and white, but at the same time it like, if you think of all the new technologies that come in, like photography didn't kill painting, just because there are typewriters doesn't mean there are many more Shakespeares, right? So it just the we should be quite confident that the real creativity and the ability of humans to use this tool, right? So I would think of this as purely a tool that will make people 10x more productive with what they do. It really doesn't. I mean, very few tools tend to replace people. It might shrink a certain set of activities. So, for example, I can see how copy editing by AI would become so good that you would not need just copy editing as a function, right? Just since we are on topic of writing and sort of dig deep into that, you would need developmental edits. You will need edits that make the logic clear or will ask for more other things. But like fixing things like typos and copy editing can be completely eliminated out of the thing. So I'm not saying that AI will not shrink existing things, but it will expand the amount of work that humans will do.
Excellent. Another question that we have is, what more can we expect from Picto, Samir, in the future?
Yes. So from Picto, I think the next few things that are coming up in Picto are, Picto already is integrated where you have even fewer things to write about the prompt. The few big things that will come is that to take an existing image, and say, hey, generate, I like this, but I want more variations of this exact same image. That's, and like things like replace the color, make this into a book cover, let me add my title of the book. Or if I'm creating a character design, I want to create a lot of writers who are writing fiction on Stack would want to convert their characters into things, sort of a specialized like flow for that. And then I think the other big thing that is coming soon on Picto is that you would be able to create limited editions out of this. So if you said, oh, I've created these character designs and I want to only offer it to my like 100 fans, you can do that. So those are the big things that are coming down the pike on Picto.
Excellent. Looking forward to the same. Um, with this, we don't have any further questions right now. If you would like to plug in, it would be my request if you would like to, speak a little more about the Hive, because we do have a couple of creators there who've generated images and they are selling them as, in the form of digital goods. So if you would like to speak a little about Hive, that would be really great.
Yeah, so I will, in fact, more than I will show. I wonder if they can project on my thing. We already, like, so the on my account, everything that I said on Picto is already possible to do.
Right.
So you can create an image using Picto, and then you are able to say that there are only 50 copies of this that I want to share, and sort of create a collectible like that.
Right.
On Hive, we had Vinayak Verma, who's an artist who created these beautiful covers
True.
for public domain books, because one of the things we want to encourage writers to do is to understand that they could actually use either artists or AI to create these wonderful images that they can offer their fans. And so what Hive is as a marketplace just for that, right? So very highly produced, handcrafted things, not like AI produced. So that was the idea.
Excellent. So with this, thank you so much for your time, Samir. If we don't have any further questions, we would like to conclude here. And I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people, and to get their journey started as a fiction writer or as a creator in general. And for those who are not sure which appropriate platform to use for your work, you know now Start.me is the place for you. Thank you, everybody, for joining. See you guys in the coming weeks with a different topic and a different creator. So, till then, have a great week. Bye, all. Thank you, Samir, once again.
Thank you.